Welcome to this edition of The American Purpose. My name is Jack Moline. I am the president of Interfaith Alliance. 60 years ago, Henry Luce, the publisher of Life magazine, invited 10 prominent men, each to compose an essay on the national purpose. Then, as now, there was a sense that we stood at the beginning of a time of cultural and political change. Our project expands on this work as each episode explores one perspective of where our nation was, where it is, and where it should be heading with a contemporary thought leader. My guests are from the fields of faith, government, politics, and culture, and they've been generously agreeable to sharing this time with us. You can find out more about Interfaith Alliance and our mission to protect your faith and freedom at interfaithalliance.org and by listening to our radio program and podcast, State of Belief, at stateofbelief.com. But right now, let's find out more about the American Purpose with my guest, Pastor Mike McBride of Faith in Action. And Pastor Mike, it's always important to say the name of your organization carefully because there's too much faith in action in this country. We need faith that is in action. So welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi Jack. It's so great to be with you, and much love and respect to this effort. I find it to be a very important contribution.
As are yours. I mean, I know you started very much locally in the Bay Area with PICO, and it was not long before your prophetic voice was heard across the country and across faith lines as well. So we're very pleased to have you with us. So let me start by asking you, from your perspective, what was the original purpose, the original national purpose of the United States?
Wow. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
I know that there is a mythology about the United States that is about being the land of the free and the home of the brave, a place for religious freedom and to be free from the tyranny of kings and queens and perhaps elites, etc. But we can't escape the history that is the United States, that was founded with imperialism, with lots of bloodshed, lots of hegemony, done often in the name of God, at least as a moral cover, but without the sensibilities of the Creator, who literally creates all things to be in harmony with one another. And so I think the mythology of the United States of America as a democratic project often carries the day among those who are deeply committed to this project. But I think we have to continue to ask ourselves, is there ever a project that is faithful to its aims if it's founded in domination and imperialism and in genocide? And so it's a very, I think, tug and pull question. I hope that the project of the United States of America is one that can reflect some of our most highest ideals, which are about justice and fairness and inclusion for all people, and us righting the wrongs that perhaps have been done in order to reach the mythology that we often purport.
Do you think the intentions of our founders were geared toward that positive mythology, or is it your impression that they were looking to create a justice that was for just us?
I mean, I don't know. I can only go by what they wrote. And I think if what they wrote described Native Americans and indigenous people as savages, if what they wrote described enslaved Africans as 3/5 of a human being, if what they wrote only really acknowledged elite white men, then I don't know what I can do beyond just being charitable, super charitable about their intentions, and ignore what they wrote, and then how they actually lived it out and led. And so I think it's important for us to tell the truth and be truthful and be honest and say that people can always repent and progress and change and transform and be better. But what they wrote and what they did caused lots of harm, some of which many of us are still living with to this day. And perfection need not be the prerequisite for good intentions, but it ought to be a kind of lens for us to be able to be truthful so we don't repeat the same wrongs again.
So in that sense, let's ask the next question, which is, what do you believe ought to be the American purpose going forward?
Yes, great question. And so as a follower of Jesus, someone whose life and worldview, I hope are shaped by the sacred texts that live within the Judeo-Christian framework, I hope that the American project can be one that reflects the desire to steward creation, is the language I would use, to take that which has been given to us as a gift, human beings, children, families, resources, land, wealth, talent, use all of that to steward creation towards a just, harmonious, life-giving society. And when the United States does not live up to that, then we are required to hold ourselves accountable and submit to the prophets and the teachers and the moral leaders and the public leaders that help us become that more faithful to that particular kind of moral vision. And so I do believe that the project of America has to be one that stewards creation, all of creation, not just the people who look like us, who believe in our political parties, who hold our kind of domestic or international sensibilities. We must steward creation. We must live in a way that helps all of creation flourish. And that is what I believe we must kind of lean into in the 21st century. Or as Dr. King says, if we don't learn to live together as family, as brothers, as sisters, as loved ones, we will perish together as fools. That is, I think, the formula for not just our national way of life, but certainly in a globalized world, the way we have to figure out harmony across the whole world.
So the answer to my next question is obvious to many and a mystery to some. When you say stewardship, what does that mean? Yes.
So stewardship, at least in the way I try to teach and disciple our folks, is about maximum appropriate involvement and responsibility. Stewardship denotes that we all have been given agency and power. We've been given unique contributions. It is like the body. In the scriptures, the Apostle Paul says that there are many members, yet one body, and the eyes don't say to the ears, how come I can't hear? And the feet don't say to the hands, how come I can't, hold things, right? So stewardship is the unique contribution that we are called to make with that which is within our hands, within our grasp, within our influence, and to do it in such a way where it does not impede the ability of those who have been given the similar unique power and responsibility to do their part as well. Steward is about a coordinated, collective caretaking of that which has been created and doing it with a kind of mutuality in mind. This is how I would describe it.
I asked you to make that distinction because it's very different from the sense of manifest destiny that was very much a part of a privileged elite leading our government. It is coordinated, as you say, as opposed to egotistical in its approach.
Yeah. 100%. And I appreciate that clarification because words do matter, right? And in a society where we have to be much more clear about our dialectical kind of moves we're making, absolutely. We're not talking about coercion. We're not talking about the kind of exploitative hierarchies. I do believe that everything that has been created by the Creator has a contribution to make, and the conditions need to be so where those contributions can be honored without violence, coercion, and force.
Great. So our society, I think you would agree, rests on certain foundational values. Some of them are admirable and others are not so much. What are one or two values of the United States that are worth doubling down on?
Well, the language of the founding documents that talk about the pursuit of happiness and liberty and justice for all created with inalienable rights. I think the ideals of some of these founding documents are worth doubling down on, are worth interrogating and holding ourselves to the highest possible expectations to see through. These, I think, are principles that, when applied generously and without discrimination, afford a framework and a moral compact that allows us to actually live into the human flourishing of all that has been created. And so I love that language. I love the idealism of those words. The practice, I think we still have a ways to go, but the ideals, I think, are worth doubling down on and not surrendering, even in the face of the unfaithfulness of too many, to only have them apply to a small few.
And are there any of our foundational values that are holding us back from the necessary progress we need to make?
Well, I think, again, these founding documents also have competing language in there that actually, when taken to their fullest end, actually interrupt our ability to see every human being as created in the image of God, to see every human being as created with inalienable rights. The idea that we have racial hierarchy, we have gendered hierarchies, we have class hierarchies that are intuitive to this nation's both founding and its current kind of structure. I think it is a huge obstacle that we must continue to not only dismantle, but to also overcome. We have to do both at the same time. We can't just pause progress while we dismantle, nor can we just continue to allow these obstacles to remain and we just keep attempting to climb over them and jump over them. We must do both at the same time. And I think the hierarchies, the commitments to capital and exploitative market forces, all of these things, I think, get in the way of us being able to actually commit to human flourishing, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness for everyone. And that is the great task, I think, of the 21st century, democracy that we're trying to kind of steward in this moment.
I think that's correct. I think it is. Most of our constitutional guarantees emphasize our commonality. But the first freedom in the Bill of Rights is very personal. It's freedom of religion, freedom of conscience. What are some of the values rooted in your personal belief system that you would commend to those who don't share your beliefs?
Wow. Well, I would like to believe that the best of all of our faith traditions, or even those who find themselves to be more secular, agnostic, or atheistic, the best that all of us can bring is a sense of humility, curiosity, and the commitment to do no harm, even when we disagree. And I think that speaking truth, or speaking truths with an S, is an important consideration in a very pluralistic society. It should not require us to swallow our truths, but it should create a dialectic of truth, truth-telling, truth-hearing conversations. And so, yeah, I want to believe that the best that our traditions give to us, they allow the truths that are consistent across all these different places and spaces and experiences to rise. As it is said, truth crushed to the earth will always rise. So what are those truths that are rising? And how do our faith traditions, the practices, the assumptions, the considerations how do those truths, as they arise, find resonance across the way we practice, the way we worship, the way we disciple people? I hope those are the kind of things that I would commend to my fellow faith walkers, folks who are in pursuit of the unknown, right? The God of history, the creator of the universe, that we would remain curious, that we would remain kind to each other, that we will remain committed to the principle of doing no harm.
All very solid values of Christianity. Absolutely. Pastor Mike, how should our society pursue our national purpose? What should we be doing?
Well, I do believe our society has too long centered the powerful, the privileged, and the elite. And I think we need to, as one writer deemed, the great reversal, we need to challenge our society to center the disinherited, the marginalized, and the most vulnerable. I think we have to figure out how do we see our society as a source of salvation for those who are in need of help and strength and opportunity, not as a vacuum where those who have much are constantly taking from those who have little. So I think our society has to go through a radical reimagining of itself that expands the circle of belonging, whereby we see people who are very different from us as a part of our circle of human concern, and that we minimize the othering and maximize the belonging, with those at the center being those who are most vulnerable. I think this is important because when we take care of the least of these, those who are the most vulnerable, it creates a certain kind of abundance of love, of joy, of generosity, of peace, of resources, of talent. When everyone has their basic needs met, all of society has the maximum opportunity to flourish because everyone is actually giving out of their abundance and not out of their scarcity. So I do believe we as a society have to figure out how do we flip this kind of paradigm of the elite and the wealthy and the powerful and the privileged driving our social kind of direction and vision. I think that's a huge part of how we have to move forward.
Yeah, there's an old Jewish joke about the townspeople get together to figure out what to do about the people who are living in poverty. And they come to the town council and they say, well, we figured it out. The people who are rich are going to give money to the people who are poor. And the town council says, well, how's that plan going? They said, well, we're halfway there. The poor people have agreed to accept. So how do we get to a point where people who have become used to and ensconced in privilege and affluence are willing to make room for people on whose backs they have achieved privilege and affluence?
Well, this is the question.
That's why I ask them and you have to answer them.
This is a question of our age. Well, I can say the question of human existence. I really don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I think that people who are formed in religious communities have to commit ourselves to in our tradition, the Christian tradition, we call it a kenosis. This idea that Jesus willingly gave up his privilege, that which was his to have and to own as God in the flesh. He gave that up to learn obedience even to the death of the cross. And so I do think the only way I can imagine this happening, particularly for religious people, is for us to disciple ourselves away from racism, hierarchies, and these kinds of distinctions that make us more committed to scarcity than abundance. I think it's an act of discipleship all of the way. We are all being discipled by something, someone, and we have to make a decision, particularly folks who are considered wealthy, elite, powerful, and privileged, to have a metanoia, as we say in my tradition, a heart change, a repentance, a U-turn, literally. We're going in one direction, and now we have to turn and go in another direction. Now, Dr. King says that a law will not get you to love me, but a law will keep you from lynching me. And so I do think while we wait for the hearts of the powerful, the privileged, the wealthy, the elite to change, it is the responsibility of democratic institutions and governments to ensure that the people can put guardrails in place to help ensure that the greed, the malevolence, the diabolical nature of leaders do not run so amok that they literally destroy that which must belong to the people. That is our country, that is our government, that is our rights and our values. And we are now just seeing the danger of the Trump regime, the Trump administration, the Trump presidency as a concrete example of what can happen even in the United States when these guardrails are not in place. It is not a unique challenge to us because we are seeing authoritarian populist leaders crop up all across the world in lots of different contexts. So we must now, I think, eschew some of the American exceptionalism that perhaps clings too closely to us, that makes us believe this could never happen to us. And we must begin, I think, to reevaluate the ways in which all of us who have privilege, and believe me, all of us do have some forms of privilege, how do we put our privilege in service to the people and to the vulnerable, knowing that if we do so, we may perhaps have a transformation, both personal, social, communal, national, and dare I say global, that will literally save our lives and our souls.
So you've already sort of alluded to the role that the individual plays in promoting that national purpose through discipleship. Mm-hmm. Are there people, historical characters, or contemporary individuals to whom you would recommend someone who is looking for discipleship?
Oh my. Well, I mean, we've just celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. I believe he's one of our most precious and important teachers of these truths. Ella Baker is another important companion in the era of Dr. King, who's often erased from these conversations, unfortunately. But, Ella Baker says strong people don't need leaders, right? And so the idea that we must prioritize the building up of people and their own agency. I am obviously a follower of Jesus the Christ, and so I do believe the words that Jesus spoke, the life that Jesus lived, the power that Jesus was able to channel is an offering for all of us to pull from. I am someone who also finds great strength from music and the arts. And so, I think aesthetic kind of contributors is important to help cultivate the imagination, to give us a sense of wonder, to help remind us of the contrast of both beauty and ugliness, of light and gloom, of the static and the very dynamic. And so, those artists range in my mind from people in a jazz context, folks who sing wonderfully about love, the Marvin Gayes of the world, and and man, Deborah Cox's and Mary and these kind of folks who continue to catalyze our imagination. Emmanuel Katangale is a very wonderful mentor of mine, who is a Ugandan Catholic priest that taught me ethics at Duke University. I find him to be a very important person. Dr. William Barber, Dr. Cornel West, Maya Angelou. Man, I go on and on and on. Folks that are able to help make sense of the foolishness of this age. I will commission many of these folks to us all.
So that's a pretty good list. Jesus, Dr. King, and Marvin Gaye. Faith, hope, and harmony. I like
it. Yeah.
Pastor Mike, I have one more question for you before I let you go. Are you optimistic about America's future?
I am optimistic about the people of America. I believe that empires fall, but the people persist. I think that God is more concerned about the people of this land than God is concerned about the nation state. And so I think if the people flourish, then America will do well. If the people continue to find our lives precarious and vulnerable, then it will be the judgment of God, as seen through history, that nations and empires will collapse in upon themselves, and the people will remain to construct something of consequence and of much, much more faithful possibility. And so if I look at America today, I think that we have a choice, and the choices that we make will inform my optimism. The last 4 years have given all of us, I think, a cautionary tale of what it looks like when we take for granted America, right, and its kind of norms, even with its foibles and idiosyncrasies. We are worse off today than we were 4 years ago. And so we can still be better, or we can be worse. And it will, I think, reside with the people. So I find great optimism with people more than I do with nation states, because I do believe that is who God created to steward the world, people, human beings. And prayerfully, we can create more just societies.
Wonderful. Pastor Mike, thank you, and thanks to you, our listeners, for engaging with us and exploring the American purpose. It's been an honor and a pleasure to spend this time with Pastor Mike McBride, who shared his perspective so generously. You can listen to this and other episodes at AmericanPurpose.org and learn more about us at stateofbelief.com and interfaithalliance.org. Interfaith Alliance has produced this program under the guidance of Ray Kirstein. I am Jack Moline, encouraging you to live with purpose.